choice. Follow international rules or face harsh penalties and further isolation. I think you'd have to acknowledge that today Iran is more isolated with its own people as well as the region and the world than it has been any time in the past 2 decades. The United States is determined to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, period. I know that for Israel, there is no greater existential strategic threat. Trust me, we get that. It's also a threat, the acquisition of nuclear weapons by Iran. It's also a threat to the security, short-term, mid-term, and long-term, to the United States of America. And many other countries in this region and around the world strongly oppose a nuclear-armed Iran. It would threaten them, trigger an arms race in this region, and undermine the efforts to stop the spread of nuclear weapons, which would be a sorry outcome for such a promising beginning in the 21st century. For all those reasons, confronting this challenge is and must be a top national priority for the United States of America. We're determined to keep the pressure on Iran so that it will change its course. And as we do, we will also be seeking to improve relations between the Israelis and Palestinians. They are connected indirectly, but there is a relationship. We call on Arab states who share a mutual concern about Iran. We call on Arab states to support the effort to bring peace between Palestinians and Israelis and to take their own steps forward for peace with Israel. These are critical goals in their own rights. Their pursuit also denies Tehran the opportunity to exploit the differences between Israelis and Palestinians and Israelis in the Arab world, and to distract the many countries that stand united against Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons and the support of terrorism. Building peace and security between a Jewish democratic state of Israel and a viable independent Palestinian state is profoundly in Israel's interest, if you'll forgive me for suggesting that. I've learned never tell another man or another country what's in their own interest, but it seems self-evident. It's also profoundly in the interest of Palestinians. And it's fundamentally in the national security interest of the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, in my experience, one necessary precondition for progress is that the rest of the world knows this. There is no space. This is what they must know. Every time progress is made, it's been made when the rest of the world knows there is absolutely no space between the United States and Israel when it comes to security. None. No space. That's the only time when progress has been made. And I applaud Prime Minister Netanyahu's recent call for 2 states for 2 people, lending a vital voice to what the Israelis, Palestinians, their Arab neighbors all know in their heart to be true. Ladies and gentlemen, the status quo is not sustainable. The status quo is not sustainable. It's no secret that demographic realities make it increasingly difficult for Israel to remain both a Jewish homeland and a democratic country in the absence of a Palestinian state. Genuine steps toward a 2-state solution are also required to empower those living to live in peace and security with Israel and to undercut their rivals who will never accept that future. For Israel, then, this is about both preserving your identity and achieving the security you deserve, lasting security. For Palestinians, statehood will not just fulfill a legitimate and long-sought aspiration common to all peoples, it will restore the fundamental dignity and self-respect that their current predicament denies them. I understand why both sides are skeptical. I've been doing this for a long time. Not as long as my friend Dennis Ross, who's with me. He's with me. He has even more experience in the nitty-gritty of this than I do. We understand why both sides are skeptical. We've been down this road before. So have you. Which every time makes it a little harder to go down the road again. But I know that Israel's faith in the prospects for peace have been shaken by the Syrian experience of withdrawing from Lebanon and from Gaza, only to be rewarded with rocket fire and ambushes across your border. I know you've been frustrated by the unwillingness of some Palestinian leaders to curb incitement and take the risks that peace requires. Just as when the West Bank checkpoints proliferate and settlements grow, the Palestinians experience their own crisis in confidence and come to doubt Israeli intentions. We all know what happens when cynicism festers. Distrust, harsh words, and eventually violence. The cycle of unintended consequences, which has happened more times than I can count, has led you to build more walls that may offer short-term relief, but will not bring sustained security that you seek. This is no way to live. This cycle must be broken. In the Middle East that I first visited, peace between Israelis and its neighbors seemed absolutely impossible even to discuss. Those who suggested a two-state solution, and no one did then actually, but had someone suggested a two-state solution, they would have been considered either demented or dreamers. But then, Israel, Egypt, and Jordan all acted boldly to end decades of conflict. Over time, other contacts have emerged between Israelis and Arabs. And there is now an Arab peace initiative that makes an important contribution by envisioning a future in which Israel is secure and at peace with its Arab neighbors. Turning these visions into reality is among the hardest challenges we face. But we have to face it. There is no alternative. As Prime Minister Netanyahu said, and I quote, all sides need to take action in good faith if peace is to have a chance. But it's hard. My words, it's hard. Well, it's always easier to point fingers. It's time for Israelis and Palestinian leaders to acknowledge each other's steps to heed this call, even when more remains to be done, and for the world to do the same thing. Your Prime Minister is roundly criticized in other parts of the world, but your Prime Minister has endorsed the idea of a Palestinian state. He has removed roadblocks and checkpoints that choked the West Bank. These were difficult decisions. Not all that was asked for on the other side, but these were difficult decisions. It's also difficult for the Palestinian Authority to take a step that it has to take to combat incitement and reform the institutions it's reforming. Of an even greater note, it's building an effective, for the first time, a genuinely effective security force to uphold law and order in Area A. In my view, with the potential to do it throughout the West Bank and throughout the Palestinian territories. President Obama and I believe that in President Abbas and Prime Minister Fayyad, men who I've known for a long time, Israeli leaders finally have willing partners who share the goal of peace between two states and have the competence to establish a nation. Their commitment to peace is an opportunity that must be seized. It must be seized. Who has there been better to date to have the prospect of settling this with? But instead, 2 days ago, the Israeli government announced